encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield. This is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. Check your calendars. This is not December, but Chad Landman is joining me from Columbia, Tennessee, where he serves the Graymere Church of Christ as education minister. Is that the official title?
That's the official title. That's the
Chief
title on the
cook and
website.
bottle washer. Okay.
Education and everything else minister would be the official title.
Chad joins us every December or end of November for our annual holiday gift guide episode, which has become a thing. Chad, I don't know whether you realize it or not, but it's like an annual tradition. Okay, good.
I'm already preparing. I'm collecting
stick
links
stuff in an
already.
Amazon list. Yeah.
But I did wonder when I got the email from you, I was like, what month is this? Did I miss like 6 months or what month is this? But yeah, thank you so much, Robert, for having me on, man.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. We see each other, I guess, around sometimes, but most of the time we just talk in December. So
That's right.
I'm glad to have an opportunity in May.
I like to say that I see you in person sometimes in February for Freight Harbin lectureships, and then I talk to you again in at the end of November. So
there you go. And that's good. The life of ministry. Today, we are discussing online ministry and evangelism, and this is a topic that comes up frequently in our listener surveys. Chad comes to mind for a variety of reasons. He certainly dabbles in the space, as the holiday gift guides each year indicate. But also, Chad is known for the active digital parenting workshops that he conducts literally all across the country. And you want to check that out. Chad's website, by the way, Chad Landman, chadl.co.co. And under the Stuff I Do menu option, you'll find the digital parenting seminar link or workshop link, and he's got information about all of that there. I want you to check that out, including maybe even some resources, slideshows, things like that. I always appreciate, Chad, how willing you are to share this information. You don't put it behind paywalls or make a church pay for it to come there, but your congregation will be blessed.
That is an excellent page to go to. That is the resource page that I highlight during the workshop when I do those workshops. And so, and I was telling you before we started the show, as soon as I think that people have lost interest in the workshop, I get invitations to come in all sorts of other different places. And so my schedule is very full for the second half of 2022, and it's already starting to fill up for 2023. So if you'd like to have me out, like to talk about some of that stuff, if you'd like for me to make you a video, I can do that. I just want to help and minister to your congregation as I can do that.
Yeah, well, it's a really great resource. And I was scrolling through, if you're watching the video version, I was scrolling through, you got sessions on device control in your home and beyond, gaming, is it safe or not, online or otherwise, social media, and then just becoming a better digital parent. These are just really super practical topics, and I know that I think you cover things from a higher level and then even get down to the details and all of that, walking people through settings on phones and stuff like that. You don't have to be a tech expert to get the content that you're delivering in this seminar. So anyway,
it's not technical at all, and I really appreciate you highlighting this. It's not technical at all, and we do have a tech session as far as getting out your devices and looking at your settings and going through those and different things like that. So I try to explain that, but those that's the 3.5 hour basic workshop. But basically, I've got probably twice as many other talks that I've done in a bunch of different ways. I just finished workshop number 70. I've done 70 of these in the past 8 years. And so it's kind of blown me away to think about that. So
things have changed a little in the last 8 years.
They have.
In the tech space. Wow.
And it's constantly, I'm constantly updating those things and changing those presentations to fit each congregation. And I can cater usually when a congregation approaches me, they're like, "Hey, what's your format?" and everything. I'm like, "Hey, I've done 70 of these and I've done them 70 different ways. And so you just tell me what you need and what you would like to do and what your schedule would be. And I'm really flexible on that."
That's great. Well, speaking of things that have changed in the last 8 years, I think online evangelism has. And, I remember the time when maybe several years ago, it just sort of seemed like, that's a good thing to do. Maybe put some stuff out there, see what happens. Increasingly, I am convinced that this is something that is not only a good thing to do, but a very important, if not, maybe there may be some parts of the world or of our country where this might be an overstatement, but I'm willing to say that online evangelism is just about a necessity these
It
days, just
is.
practically speaking. Yeah. Do you agree on that? And you want to expound on that?
Absolutely. I agree on that. And it is absolutely it's not the most essential part of your ministry. The most essential part of your ministry, obviously, would be to, preach the gospel, preach that in person. But a great tool that we've been given in the past, and we've seen it just accelerate crazily here in the past 10 years, especially even in the past 2 to 3 years with COVID, has been this kind of online ministry and evangelism. And I tell you what, it's a gateway. I think about it as a gateway. It's a very large gateway to your congregation, to your organization, to your blog, to your website, whatever kind of organization you're working for, you're working with. It's a huge gateway that will allow people to access to your content, access to the message of Jesus, and it could very well lead to new Christians, very well lead to saving people's lives for eternity. So it's a very important thing to think about.
Well, the thing is, like, everybody's on it. I mean, and again, we understand literally that's not the case, right? I had a guy that came and sat in one of these chairs behind me just this week and said, "I don't do the computer."
Right.
He said, "My wife does the computer." Okay, I understand that. There are some people of certain generations or whatever. By and large, everybody's there. And of course, COVID proved that to us. In some ways, that was exacerbated just because everybody was at home and everybody was working at home, blah, blah, blah. Let's not relive the past.
Right.
But the reality is people are already there. And you don't have to visit a place. And especially this is true for congregations. You don't have to visit the congregation for a first impression. All you have to do is go to their Facebook live stream or their YouTube stream or at the very least their website, and it's there.
Right. That's where the first impression is happening right now. In fact, your first impression is going to be your online presence, your website, a combination of your social channels that we're going to talk about today, a combination of those different things with your YouTube channel and live services that you even have. A lot of people will watch a live service of yours before they come to a real service.
Yeah.
Whether that's, at the time that they're worshiping or not. So it's very important that you kind of get these things right.
Backing up a little bit then, let's define some terms. What do you say? And maybe to begin, I mean, this is a preacher show. I think we know evangelism, but let's start with that definition and then lay over it on top of that, the online component as we think about this.
Right. So, I mean, evangelism, we know, is the act of preaching, teaching the gospel, spreading the gospel with the intention of sharing the message and teachings of Jesus Christ. I mean, that if you boil it down to the absolute basic, that's what it is. So if you were to put online evangelism or online ministry in that, it's the act of preaching and teaching the gospel with the intention of sharing the message of Jesus Christ through an online medium, such as a blog or a website or social media or other consumable online form or any of that combination of those things. And so it's very important for us to understand that this is a form of evangelism, that this is a form of spreading that news. And I think if you look at if you have been doing this stuff for any amount of time, I know I can go to our Graymere webpage and look at our podcasts page, look at our YouTube channel that we stream live every week. And we also post additional videos there. I can look at those and I can see anywhere from 10 to 20 countries of people that are watching our content, that are commenting on our stuff, that are doing those things. And some churches don't have, some churches have more far reaching ministries than that. And so it's incredible to see the way that the gospel can be propagated through this medium.
Yeah. I think there are some naysayers growing even among us relative to online evangelism, in part because of all of the negativity that surrounds it,
Right.
The online space. Um, what do you say to that? I mean, Facebook, Twitter, these social media platforms especially are known. We used to say trolls. Now we just kind of say, well, it just seems everywhere. Everybody's got an opinion. People feel empowered, cloaked behind computer screens and on keyboards, saying things they wouldn't necessarily say in person. Obviously, COVID exposed a lot of that as well. What's your response?
Well, I would say, that's nothing new. That was about in magazines and even publications in the church, before there was any kind of online presence of the church.
Yeah.
And
letters to the editor.
Letters to the editor. There were plenty of hit pieces. I mean, you wouldn't actually call them hit pieces on those, but there were plenty of like, well, a certain congregation across the street is, it's kind of things like that. And it's like, this is not what that's supposed to be. If you are spreading that message of Jesus, it's not pointing out other people's faults. It's not pointing out the people that are maybe doing something wrong that you don't agree with. And so again, this is not about arguing. It's not about bickering. It's not about demeaning others' beliefs. It's not about pointing out even, getting to other religions and other denominations. It's not about that. It's about, again, propagating that message of Jesus Christ and really taking your congregation, your ministry, your website, whatever that might be, and really just making sure that everybody sees Jesus through those online things and those screens that they're looking at.
Some of this is just evangelism 101, right? I mean, it's like
it is.
When we are thinking about how to evangelize, we want to focus on the areas that we have in common first so that we can build trust and establish a foundation on which we can have a constructive conversation. Like, that's what we need. But for whatever reason, when we get online, we forget that. And I don't know if it's the mass media side of that. Maybe we feel more empowered to say bold things to crowds of people as opposed to what we would say one-on-one.
I think we do. I think we all have a big microphone when we tap out a message on our Facebook or something like that. And we feel like maybe it's true and maybe it's not. We feel like a lot of people are listening, and sometimes they are. And so, that can be part of it for sure.
And, I know neither of us are saying, and I hope by now, 15 seasons in, that the audience understands, that we're not going to advocate for compromising doctrine or anything like that. I think a lot of this is just tact or manners or, being kind to people.
General civility and being kind and showing Jesus to others. Yeah.
Romans 2 says it's the goodness of God that leads us to repentance. And while sometimes godly sorrow is necessary, I don't know that we always lead with that.
Right.
So, as we're crafting this, it occurs to me that I need to know like who my audience is. One of the things I've done a lot of research over the years on podcasting. And one of the things that these experts tell you to do in podcasting is to think of your ideal listener and talk to that person. So rather than addressing a crowd of people, the best practice would be to talk to one person, because the likelihood right now is that there's not a group of people listening to this together, but that there's one person who's listening to us right now, maybe while they're cutting grass or cleaning the house or running or doing something like that. So when we talk about online evangelism, whether that's Facebook or the website or whatever, how do you think we ought to tailor that? I mean, should I think about, I'll tell you what my opinion is, and I'll let you see if you agree with this. My opinion is I ought to address it to a person, not specifically, but in my mind, I'm crafting this message like I'm talking to someone, and I may have some ideal in my mind of who that person is or what that person looks like or what they're going through. And I may base that on my community, like here's what's been going on in my community. Here's my general consensus on like the values of this community, generally speaking, or whatever. And I'm going to try to address my message to that group, realizing that there are more people than just people who live in this town who may like us on Facebook or watch our videos or whatever.
Right.
And also admitting the fact that, like, when I'm preaching, if somebody's watching a video of my sermon, they're watching a video of me talking to the people that were literally in front of me then, right? And I think everybody gets that. But if I'm crafting a specific message, I'm doing that like I'm talking to one person, because I want that to relate to them in a very personal way. That's my opinion of this. Where are you with that?
Well, and I tend to see it in a similar way. And I was thinking about this episode, and I was thinking, how would I compare two different types of online ministry? So, as an example, the church I work for, Graymere, here in Columbia, and the website Radical Christianity, Wes McAdams, excellent job, does a lot of different stuff. He has a lot of people that follow that website, and he's great at being consistent with his content and things like that. But he has a much more broader audience, and so he's going to be talking to a lot more broad people. So, but when I do a video or something for Graymere, when I do a devotional or something and put it on the Graymere YouTube channel, well, who am I talking to? I'm talking to mostly the people, the members here at the Graymere Church, at the Graymere Church of Christ, and that's about it. But at the same time, that could be exposed to several other people, and because it is an online medium, and there's our YouTube page right there, because it's an online medium, the reach could be unbelievable. We could have a sermon, and I doubt this would happen, but we could have a sermon or a video that could hit, that could just absolutely explode and hit, be very, very popular. It's happened before with certain other individuals in the brotherhood and stuff like that. And so we've had a pretty good response to our YouTube channel as well. And so I tend to think of it as very similar to you, as I'm thinking of a specific person in mind sometimes. When I'm thinking about it, especially, there is that one person that is sitting in their home listening to the message, but also I'm trying to figure out, how can I tailor this to the group that I am ministering to? And I think that, Wes over at Radical Christianity, he knows the group that he's talking to. We all know our congregations and all know the groups of people that are the followings that we have, whatever that might be, of who we're talking to. And so I think that's a good thing to move forward. And I think, you have to make sure that you tell them what you want them to know, what you want them to do, and how those things are being acted upon. And it's an interesting balance for sure.
Yeah. I think intentionality is pretty important. It's not just getting something out there or putting things. I'm all about syndication and low hanging fruit. That's what I call it. Low hanging fruit. if it's there, like if we're recording our sermons anyway, you might as well upload them to YouTube. It's free,
Right.
But at the same time, I want to put things out there to inform the congregation. We've got so much going on that sometimes people who are not involved in every group, and how could you be, reasonably speaking, they want to know. They're encouraged to know that, hey, even though I'm a senior adult, the youth group is doing a lot of really cool things. And so they'd love to know those things. Social media is a great way to inform them about the things that are going on. But also, in doing that very same act, if a member of the community is looking at that, we'll look at that and see, wow, this is a vibrant congregation. Look how diverse they are in terms of age. Look at the diversity of ministries that they offer and the things they care about. And all I'm doing is taking pictures when I'm someplace and uploading them. It's an easy thing to do. But that intentionality, I think, helps a lot. And then, so I think it informs the congregation, and in one sense, if we can use biblical words, edifies the congregation. And then on the other side of that, the evangelistic component comes in, not just in they see that we care, the community sees we care, but also I want to be intentional about putting stuff out there that is evangelistic in its nature, and then I'm reaching out to them. And all of that through free social media channels.
It's at the basic level, getting the message of the gospel out there is marketing. This is what we're talking about. This is, you are selling a product to people to try to get them to buy it. And it's not necessarily, you're not selling it for them to buy it with money, but you're selling the gospel so that they can buy it and be part of the Church of Jesus Christ. And that is exactly what we're doing. And so, I mean, that is the most noble of goals that I think that we can have.
Yeah.
And so all of those things, from you snapping a picture and putting on Instagram to spending hours and hours on a series and putting it on YouTube, it's the same. It's hopefully accomplishing the same goal, and that is to bring people to Jesus.
So let's talk about getting into the brass tacks of some of this then, some of the parts of an effective online ministry and evangelism. So you said, we're talking marketing in some ways. And by the way, to me, 1 Corinthians 9 is sort of a marketing kind of passage. I become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Paul's tailoring the message to hit hearts of people. And sometimes that looks like putting it in the right kind of wrapping paper, that somebody will at least be enticed to see it first. And in our day and time, that looks a lot like marketing. The fonts we use, the graphics we use, the way it's presented, the general tone and tenor of something, I think goes a long way with that. And by the way,
and that stuff is so easy to do these days.
Yes, it is. And
hard to do 20 years ago. Easy now.
But we've been doing it for years. I mean, you go back and look at some of that Gospel Advocate or any of those things that have been around for forever, and whether they were hand drawn or whatever, people have invested the time traditionally to do that. So, we ought to do the same thing. What are some parts of this? I know we're going to get even down further into like the actual how to do it, but from the initial tier of this or level, where do we start? What are these parts?
So here's your 5-point sermon on parts of an effective online ministry right here. 5 points. Modern cohesive branding. Okay. And again, we don't like to say we need our church brand. We don't like to say that necessarily.
Yeah.
But it really just boils down to, does your church have a modern recognizable logo typeface? Do the colors and designs, do they flow into kind of everything that they do? Does everything kind of look the same and uniform from your website to your bulletin to whatever else you put out? And then number 2 is a modern user and mobile friendly website. I cannot tell you how important that is this day and age to have, and how many churches I see that do not have that, and how easy that is to do, how inexpensive that is to do these days. You do not have to pay somebody thousands of dollars to design your website for you. And so basically that boils down to, is your website easy to use? Is it easy to find? I've known some websites that I can't even find because the URL is so long, or the Google search terms are not applicable, or anything like that. Does it give the right information up front to your congregation? Most people look on a church website if they're visiting your church. And again, we're mostly talking about churches here and effective online ministry evangelism, but this would apply to any kind of conference or any kind of website or whatever following you have, a blog or anything like that. But for churches, like, what do most people look at the website for? Well, what time do they meet and what's their address? I need to know what time church starts, and I need to know what the address is so I can put it in my GPS and be there, because we're new in this community. And so, do you have that on your front page? Again, I cannot tell you how many churches forget to put that on their front page.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that here in a little bit in depth. But number 3 is informative and organized social channels. Do they, just like we said, you said before so greatly, do they connect your community? Do they connect your organization, your followers, or your congregation? Do they keep them informed about things that are going on? Do they showcase ministries? Do they showcase events often and frequently? And again, we're not talking about making a post every hour on the hour. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. We're talking about weekly kind of things. So just so that people have those when they're scrolling through their Instagram or scrolling through their Twitter, that they see that church or they see that organization pop up and go, oh, they're active. They're doing some things. And then I talk, number 4 I have is an active YouTube channel or a podcast, or both of those. And so are your services, do you stream live every Sunday? Can people see organized content? Can they look at services, videos of your services? Can they look at other videos that you've produced? Are they able to find your podcast easily? I know that I can sit here and go on Google and type in preachers in training, and it pops right up. It's right there. Some congregations have Yeah, it is. And it's it really is. Some congregations, don't have that though. They'll use, and we'll talk about this in depth a little bit, but they'll use all sorts of services that do not interface correctly or that were cheap to use or easy to use. And you would not believe how easy it is actually to get a podcast on the podcast directory. And so the last thing I have is consistency. And I mean, just be consistent. And that is my number one struggle. You cannot say this, Robert, because you are incredibly consistent on of all this stuff right here. Me though, however, if you can that's the 90% of the battle. If you can be consistent with these types of things. But I know that Graymirror is going to stream at 8:45 a.m. Every Sunday morning. And it's going to be reliable, and it's going to look good, and it's going to sound good. And that's really comforting to know that we have that kind of consistency.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just what we're going to be talking about here in depth this morning.
All right. So modern cohesive branding, modern user and mobile friendly website, informative organized social channels, active YouTube channel or podcast, and consistency. A lot of people don't think about this. I've grown to think of YouTube as a social media outlet. It's just another platform. And it's got its own, Facebook has a culture, Twitter has a culture, Instagram has a culture, and best practices, algorithmic blah, blah, blahs. And YouTube is kind of the same way. You get a channel, you can organize it the way you want, all that stuff, which is handy. However, not however, but having said that, some people might say, well, our congregation has its own this or that. That's all well and good. But when people think, I want to look for this video, the number one place they go is YouTube. So why not syndicate it and put it there too? It's
the best. I think it's one of the best free tools that we have in our toolbox as Christians to be able to make a video that people watch. Video speaks to people. People would much rather watch a video than they would read an article. Yeah. They would much rather see something visual and something well prepared and something well made than read something, frankly. And that's just a sign of the times. And it's I think it's absolutely essential that you have at least some type of YouTube channel, and of course be consistent with it.
The good news for a lot of us as preachers, if you're listening to this, you're a preacher or a minister, and you're thinking, boy, I don't have time for all this. Syndication is your friend. Yes, you've already done the sermon and the recordings out there. Now just go in there and type in some notes under the description on YouTube or on the website. And suddenly you have some search engine optimization. You have, you've got the content for the people who would rather read than watch, although I think that with you, they're in the minority. It's all right there. And then you can take little snippets of that and turn them into social media posts and all of that, or stagger it and wait 3 months or 6 months and then share a tidbit from a sermon back in the day. You don't have to link it to that previous sermon, or you could, but it's just fresh content. Less people forgot. I forgot what I preached about 3 months ago. I don't expect everybody else to remember it either. So I think that's helpful.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's easy to do. All this stuff and these minutes add up to hours that you're doing these things. Yep. And I know that you of all people know that, but at the same time, this is an essential part of your ministry. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to Graymirror, and I keep using Graymirror because obviously I work here.
Yeah, that's where you are.
But people will come and say, "Hey, we found your stuff online. Yeah. Hey, we found your website. Hey, we saw Andrew preaching a sermon on this, and we loved it, and we wanted to come and see." I can't tell you how many times that's happened, and it's so wonderful to see that kind of thing with these things actually working. It actually does work.
And you get to minister even when you're cutting the grass, or even when you're asleep, or
you get to minister to people around the world and never have to go there.
That's right. Yeah. And it's similar to what happens when you write a book, or anything, write an article and contribute it to a magazine or something. It's all there. All right, so let's dig in a little bit. And the first thing you said was a modern cohesive branding. We're talking logos and that sort of stuff, right?
Right. And it's not just about logos, and it's not just about it's not about being trendy. Let me make sure that we understand that. It's about having and again, we don't like to talk about our church being a brand, but it is in every sense of the word, a brand. And if you can make that more attractive, guess what else becomes more attractive to people? The gospel, the message, the real core of what you're trying to get to. And so if your signage on your building, if your bulletin and your website all look the same, they all have the same typography, they all have the same thing, there's really not an excuse for getting that kind of stuff done these days.
Yeah.
And
I
when I
think
say,
some people,
go
I
ahead.
think some people get a little nervous about the branding thing because they don't
Right.
want to appear sleazy or like you're trying to be a salesman.
Right.
And that's not what we're talking about. But if you just think about it, I mean, you could talk about the golden arches of McDonald's or the Nike swoosh or whatever. I mean, those are old examples, but they work. What I want is for when somebody sees the little logo, you know, we've got this little H looking thing for Henderson. And I want the average person to just sort of, when they see that, to think, oh, that's from the Henderson Church. That's a great way for them to identify whatever this content is with us very quickly without having to put a big block of text that says, from your friends at the Henderson Church of Christ, Henderson, Tennessee. Right. So that's the goal, right? Just make it where they recognize it quickly.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I actually just got some stickers printed of our new updated logo.
Ooh, that's nice.
It's a nice little G. We had a G before and we kind of updated it, and we've updated our website, of course. But I got, a bunch of stacks of these stickers done, and we're going to distribute them to people in the congregation and encourage them to kind of replace their stickers on the back of their cars so that when people see that little green G here in Columbia, they know, well, that's the church that does the closed closet every Thursday. That's the church that my kid can go to VBS. That's the church that, XYZ. And it's just so helpful to just get your brand and get yourself known out in the community. And yet there's our website there. We just updated that, and it's been really really nice for us to be able to just kind of move into this new era of I don't know, just marketing and evangelism. And it's kind of pushed us forward here, especially in the last 2 or 3 years with the pandemic and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of put the spotlight on it more in the forefront to make sure that we get this right.
Somebody's saying, okay, I don't know anything about logos and things. Well, where do they go? What are some good resources for something like that?
Well, there's an incredible amount of good resources. In fact, we use several tools here. I would first try something just very, very lowbrow as far as low profile rather.
Mm-hmm.
Go to something like Canva, and Canva is on iOS and Android. It's a free app. It's very, very nice to design different things and layouts. We actually use Igniter Media for our PowerPoints, all of our PowerPoints.
Mm-hmm.
And we just take those and put those into I put those into Photoshop and make those and cater those to Andrew's sermon series and everything like that. There's an app on iOS and Android also called Adobe Express. It's the same kind of Canva supercharged, and it has a really good way of you laying out Instagram layouts and different PowerPoint layouts and stuff like that. And a place that I wouldn't necessarily want to necessarily abuse, but there's a place called Fiverr that does really fantastic stuff. It's just a crazy awesome use of freelance materials, and people will design a logo specifically for you. We didn't use Fiverr for that, but there's probably an independent designer at your church. I know that we have used Front Street Sign in Smyrna to do a lot of our design stuff and updated our logo and all sorts of different stuff. And there's probably a member of the church out there somewhere that can probably help you update, redesign your logo. And you don't even have to necessarily have a logo. You just have a typeface that looks unique and looks modern.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it's just some of those some things I've found really good luck with Shutterstock. Shutterstock will let you pay I think it's $20 a month, and you can download super high resolution, up to 10 super high resolution photos or graphics or anything like that per month. And so these things, they do cost money, but it's still much, much, much cheaper than it was to get a designer back in the day to do these things.
Yeah. And there's a spectrum here, right? I mean, you mentioned Adobe Photoshop, right? That's more at the pro level end of things. Canva is more of a starter level of things that'll do essentially the same thing, very generally speaking. So, start there. Yeah, Shutterstock is an investment. Igniter Media is an investment. I think those are good investments, particularly if you want to be sure that you're not going to violate any copyright laws or things like that.
You don't want to rip something off of somebody else for sure.
And if you want really good quality stuff, those are the places to go. But to your point, right? Images communicate a lot. Having something that's visually attractive is really becoming more of the standard rather than the exception. It's the rule. So I think that's an important place to start.
And if you're uncomfortable with using some of that kind of stuff, if you want actual photos of your church, hire a photographer. To come to your church on Sunday and just, make an announcement. Hey, this person's going to be taking photos. Don't look at them, or something like that. And just have them take a bunch of high quality photos of your congregation and of the building and the Bible classes and things like that, and use those for your website. And so we're lucky to have a lot of that kind of equipment here and a lot of different photographers here to do that. But I'm sure that in your congregation or somebody connected to your congregation, there is a designer and there's a photographer somewhere. So utilize those tools.
All right. Number 2, that was number 1, which was modern cohesive branding. Now we move to the website, and you said we need a user-friendly, easy to navigate, mobile responsive website.
Right. And that sounds so like what you just said is like, oh, that just goes through people's ears, one ear and out the other. They're like, I have no idea what that means. Well, let me tell you what it means. The first place that people are going to be exposed to your congregation if somebody's moving into your area is going to be a Google search and clicking on your website. And they're probably 70% of them are going to do that on their phones first. And so if 7 out of 10 people are visiting your website first, and that's the first impression that they get of your congregation, should it not be good and clean and presentable? And so it needs to be fast. It needs to be mobile friendly. And when we say mobile friendly, of course, that just means it looks good on your phone, but also looks good on your desktop. There you go, right there. I don't like the way those buttons are done right there at the top, but that's our check-in buttons and things like that people access pretty much every single week. But for the most part, I love the way that Squarespace basically automatically does that. I don't have to do anything special to make sure that my website works great on the web, but also on my desktop, but great on my phone as well. And so when you get down there, it's just really nice to be able to see those things that automatically does it. If you were to take an internet window on your desktop and scrunch it down to a mobile size, you can see the effect that happens. And so most websites nowadays, most places like WordPress and Squarespace and any of those Wix, any of those tools, they will do this pretty much automatically for you. And I'm partial to Squarespace because I've been using them for so long, and that's what Graymere is built on right there. We did that several years ago. We changed over from what we had. And say there it goes right there to a kind of a mobile friendly, and it's going to look good on an iPad. It's going to look good on any screen. And that's the real kind of ticket there, is to make sure that it looks good on any screen, because there's going to be a number of different screens that your congregation, that your organization or your people read your blog on. And so you need to make sure that it's mobile friendly and clean and fast. So 90%, listen to this, 90% of people will navigate away from a website that takes more than 4 seconds to load. Now, that's notwithstanding if they know that they have a slow internet connection, that's different. But most of the time, if your website is taking a long time to load, they're just going to X out of it or go on and do something else. So there's a really cool tool called Google Website Optimizer, and we'll have that link there. But you can sign up for that. And it's always helpful if you have a Google account, but they will actually optimize and tell you how to optimize your website, crunching and compressing your photos, all sorts of different stuff. These huge companies spend a lot of time on the back end optimizing a website. And the good thing about Squarespace is that they kind of do this for you, so you don't necessarily have to do that. But if you're not using Squarespace, something like the Website Optimizer would be a good thing to use. And I've been mentioning Squarespace quite a bit, but there are other platforms. Of course, WordPress and Wix are very good. WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get platforms. And I will tell you, if you can navigate Microsoft Word, you can navigate some of these platforms. Getting them set up is the hard part. Once you do that, it's very easy. I trust HostGator and Hover for any kind of domains. And so if you wanted to update your domain, update whatever you have as far as your .com or .net or .org, that would be very good to use those HostGator and Hover for those domains. And I really like those. But WordPress, I believe the last time I heard, WordPress runs 32% of the internet. So that's a pretty big chunk of the internet that runs on WordPress. It's a powerful, powerful platform. And Squarespace and, of course, Wix. Wix has gotten a lot popular, a lot better in the last few years as well.
Yeah. If you have done any kind of blogging or anything in the past, you're probably fairly familiar. You've probably used one of these platforms, maybe especially WordPress, but you're probably familiar at least with the idea of this, what you see is what you get type deal. And, do some Googling. If you're not familiar, sometimes people, I hear it a lot, people get something in the mail about a domain name or something like that, especially congregations, and I don't know what that means. Just do some Googling, you can figure that out. Domain name is the address, the .com, .org, .net. And then you've got your hosting and your platform that you're building it on from there, which might be Squarespace or WordPress or any of those.
And you should never pay, if you're using something like Squarespace or WordPress, you should never pay more than about $200 to $250 a year for that. And you should never pay more than about $15 to $25 for a .com, .net, .org per year.
Got it.
Now, if you've got something that's a really in demand, like if you've got a .church or something like that, you might pay 30, 40, 50 bucks a year for that. But these people that send these things, and like you said in the mail, and these things telling you, well, if you don't pay us $200, you're not going to keep your domain. That's a scam.
Yeah.
And so that don't pay any attention to that. None of these places like HostGator or Hover are going to send you stuff in the physical mail.
Yeah. You ought to be able to log in somewhere, see the status of your domain, how long until it expires or is up for renewal. And usually it's on an auto renewal thing.
Yeah. And if you want to know who owns a certain domain, if you want to buy one and you want to know who owns it, you can do a whois lookup. And so you can do, it's WHOIS, and you can do, it's a public record. And if the records aren't protected, you can see who owns that. And you can make them an offer to buy that domain from them.
Okay. There you go. So website stuff. And these days, I mean, go in and update, go to like a WordPress or a Squarespace or a Wix. That'll help you make it be mobile friendly, which will help a lot. All right. Informative, I should say, and organized social channels.
And so on this, Robert, you can go a million different directions, but there's a few rules that you can really apply to where you are. And so my first kind of rule for this is kind of go to where your people are.
Yeah.
If you've got a lot of people that read your blog on your website, then you probably just need to share that on Facebook. If you've got a huge following on Facebook, you just share that stuff there. We stream at Graymere. We stream on YouTube and Facebook simultaneously. And I think a lot of congregations do that. Some people, Facebook is their internet. Right. I mean, as weird as that sounds, Facebook is their web portal where they get all of their news and things like that. And so that's good to know. We have 900 and something people in our Facebook group. And they all get that info at the same time, and we all stream there at the same time. And so while Facebook and Twitter tend to be the most common, Instagram and TikTok a little bit less so. Again, if you're in an area like in the West Coast, or if you're in a bigger city, Instagram and TikTok may be options for you. I've seen a couple of people be successful at sharing different messages on TikTok, believe it or not. And we may look at those and say, well, that's just for kids. Well, if we look at it that way, then you're alienating, all of your crowd that's under 25.
Yeah.
And if you just kind of don't share anything on Instagram, those people, kids are not, kids under 25 are not checking Facebook for news necessarily. And so again, we have to accommodate according to your audience there. And I, one thing I wanted to say about social media is that we tend to set up accounts and forget about them, and we don't need to do that. We need to be share those things consistently. Don't forget about your social media. Consistently promote, consistently encourage, and again, don't engage with what do we say? Don't engage the trolls.
Yeah.
Don't get involved in any of that kind of stuff, and just share what your congregation is doing for the most part, and you'll have a pretty successful thing. Share those links. I would be weary of doing too many things that are meme worthy or trendy. We see that sometimes. I would be a little bit wary of that. And so again, I wouldn't say necessarily stay away from that, but be very careful with things like that, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Focus on the work, focus on, in my opinion, doing congregational ministry, I want to focus on this community here, this congregation, this community. It's different. The Light Network is different than the Henderson Church of Christ because the audience is different. But for the Henderson Church, I want to focus on Henderson, Tennessee. Now, I think somebody in Columbia could benefit from some of the stuff that we're posting to the Henderson Facebook and social media channels and blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
However, my prime focus is this community. I think that sometimes is where we go wrong. We're trying to do these memes so that we can go viral and all this. And that may be great and it may have its place, but those memes tend to go sour after a while pretty quickly. So
you're absolutely right.
Just be aware of that. But my opinion is I've long held this. If you only have to pick one, if you can only pick one social media channel, Facebook is probably where you want to go just because that's where the majority of the people are. Do you agree with that?
You've got several billion, we're with a B, billion people on Facebook. Right. And so if there's one place to set up your group or set up anything like that, it's that way to do that, because a lot of your older members, if you've got an older population, down to your younger population, if your 35-year-olds and your 75-year-olds are going to be checking Facebook. But whereas those two groups wouldn't necessarily overlap with something like Instagram or TikTok. And again, something like a youth group or program or things like that. I know that John David actually supervises their Instagram account here, and he lets the kids post different things to those. And so that's an interesting idea. And while he supervises that, but that's what speaks to them. And they're going to be the ones primarily checking the Instagram account. And so again, minister to who you know your community, and go to where your people are, go to where your congregation or your followers are.
All right. And be careful about dismissing something as just for the kids, because it may be the next up and coming thing. And boy, it'd be good if you could be there on the front end.
Right.
All right. Active YouTube channel or podcast.
And I put or, but I probably should put and.
Oh, or. Yeah, sorry. I may have read and.
Well, no, it should be and so both of these mediums are free. I mean, it's free broadcasting. It's a free microphone for you to have and broadcast whatever message you want. Now, obviously, the message that we're thinking about is the message of Jesus. And so when we think about that, you don't have to choose just one media outlet anymore. You don't have to spend a ton of money on these different things. In fact, some of the stuff that I've got down here, very inexpensive. The barrier of entries on these is very low. And so let's start with the podcast. Basically, all you need is an RSS feed and the equipment to make it, a microphone and some audio editing gear, and that's it. And you don't even really have to have audio editing. I know people that just turn on the microphone and record something and turn it off. I know people in the early days of podcasting would record it with their phones, with their the little earbuds that they had. And it's fine. And so again, most people are just going to want to hear what your content is. They're not going to care whether you used a $100 mic or a $500 mic. And again, it's nice to have that kind of stuff, but basically for a podcast, all you need is a computer, the software, and an inexpensive microphone. And for the Mac, actually for any computer, I'd recommend the Rode NT Mini USB mic. It's the one I'm actually working on right here, and it actually just plugs in with one USB cable right here. And I bought me a little $15 mic stand for it to elevate it a little bit more. But as you can see, it's a $80, $90 microphone that sounds pretty decent.
Yeah.
And it's very small, very travel worthy. And you can hook headphones up to it and monitor. It's a phenomenal little microphone that I've been using for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's an inexpensive way. You don't have to have, and I'm not making fun of your setup or anything, but you've got the pro stuff, Robert, because that's what you do.
We dabble in podcasting.
Right. And so you dabble in a little bit of podcasting. So you've got that stuff but I'm sitting here with a $75 pair of headphones and a $80 to $90, microphone, and it's fine.
Yeah. All of this really isn't necessary for most people. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And you can do a lot of stuff. In fact, I just set up a church. They said, we want to start a podcast and a video series. And I said, okay, great. And this is the exact kind of stuff that I recommended to them. Now, there's all sorts of Audacity on Windows.
Yes.
Is a very good free program. It does look like it was made in like 1998.
Yes.
But it's
free.
Very powerful, but it's free and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And
we used Audacity to edit everything on the Light Network for about 9.5 years.
It's open source. It's an awesome piece of technology, and it's been around for a long, long time. And it's available on Mac OS and Windows. I personally use something called Audio Hijack. And it's on the Mac, and it's a very good, as you can see there, you can set up and record pretty much any kind of audio that you want to. They just came out with version 4, I believe. And it is a paid app. I think it's like $50, but I mean, come on, this stuff is incredible that you can do for $50 these days. And so, again, you want a decent computer that can run that, but most of that stuff, audio is not intensive.
Right.
Audio, you can run Audacity or Audio Hijack pretty much on any Mac or PC, and you can adapt. This is a USB-C microphone that I've got right here, but you can adapt that to USB-A if you've got an older computer. And so it's not a big deal. You do not need something uber powerful to do audio.
Yeah.
And when we talk about video, you might think, oh, well, I need a $4,000 computer to do video. And, that's just not the case these days.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You can get a very powerful Core i7 Dell, or you can get any M1 Mac, whether it's the M1 vanilla M1 or the M1 Pro or M1 Max. Any of those M1 Macs would be able to handle regular, just run-of-the-mill video editing. And you can get a free program called DaVinci Resolve that's made by Blackmagic Design. You may have heard them. They do a lot of audio and video equipment and stuff, and they have a really good video editing platform. But then again, you can get something pro level that the Hollywood people use. You can get Final Cut Pro. I use Final Cut Pro on my MacBook Pro, and it is amazing. There you see DaVinci Resolve. It's been very, very good to use DaVinci Resolve on some of this stuff. It's sometimes faster than Final Cut Pro. And again, a lot of the features are blocked behind the studio version of this, but again, you're not going to be using those. If you just want to basically edit and cut and put lower thirds and graphics on some things, DaVinci Resolve is available on Windows and Mac, and it's really, really good.
If you have a Mac, check out Imovie too, just as an entry-level thing.
That's right. I completely forget about Imovie because I don't ever use it, but it comes on every Mac. It's basically Final Cut Pro Junior.
Yeah. And
it's incredibly effective. And you can get that on an iPad as well. So if you're an iPad worker,
that's right. Yeah.
You can actually edit your movies on iPad. There's one that I really like on iPad. If you're an iPad person, getting your videos onto it is the problem, but LumaFusion is actually one of those that I really like on iPad.
Yeah.
And really cool.
The amazing thing about video, back when we started the Light Network, a lot of people don't remember this. We did audio and video from the very beginning. And about 6 months in, I said, video's too hard. It was taking all my time. I had the computer and everything at the time to do it, which was like a Mac Pro G5. It was the latest and greatest 10 years ago.
Ones, yeah.
Yeah, it was this big tower. But it took hours to process a video the length of something like what we're doing right now. And video has come so far in 10 years, and it's so much easier. And the majority of what I do video wise is with my phone. And I've got a tripod adapter and a tripod. And if I wanted to, I don't, but because I'm spoiled. But if I wanted to, I could edit everything from the phone and publish it to YouTube, like all from right there.
You could upload it through YouTube Studio and not even have to do anything else. It didn't have to
never leaves the phone or the iPad or whatever. So this is super easy. As you said, the barrier to entry, you probably already have a lot of the equipment that you might need to get this done. Yeah. So,
and again,
that's good stuff.
That's video and audio basically. And now I did want to back up to the podcast.
Yes.
Once you record your podcast, getting it syndicated is going to be. Am I echoing? I'm so sorry. You might have to.
I don't hear an echo. I'm sorry.
Okay, good.
I don't hear it.
Getting it on your on a podcast feed, so you have to go through the Apple directory, the iTunes directory. Again, this is the hardest part of getting a podcast approved by them. But basically, what Apple did back in the day was that they started this podcast directory back in 2000, 2001, something like that, long time ago. And basically, if you get them to approve your podcast, your RSS feed with audio in it, and any Squarespace, any WordPress page with an RSS feed, any blog page that has audio attached to that entry can be used as a podcast feed. And so when you do that, when you get that approved, it appears in the directory. So when people search it on any kind of app like Overcast or on the podcast app on your phone, it's going to appear, it's going to pop up there right away. And that's just going to get you a whole myriad more of listeners on that.
Right. Yeah. This is sort of, next level stuff. It's beyond the entry level, but if you do some Googling, you can figure this out. And as Chad said, Squarespace, WordPress, any of these modern website building platforms will automatically bake into your website an RSS feed. Really simple syndication, which is really all that you need to be able to go from that to a podcast platform.
It's really all you need.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that, Apple is not hosting this podcast. It's just mirroring what's on your website. So that's sort of I think the entry level pieces you need to know. Do some Googling and you can figure out how to get it out from there, which is it's easier. And you can
store those. Yeah, you can store those episodes. So your episodes are going to be whether they're 15 minutes or 30, 35 minutes or an hour, they're going to be anywhere from, 10 to 50 megabytes. Yeah. So you're going to need somewhere to store that. So you can actually host those on something like Dropbox or Google Drive. And if you wanted to get a little bit more advanced, you could actually go to Amazon Web Services. And if you've got an Amazon account, you can just set up an S3 bucket. And again, that sounds pretty technical, but you can just set up a storage called Super Simple Storage. So RSS and then Super Simple Storage. And you could just set up a bucket there, basically a folder, and upload all your episodes there and link them publicly. And you could do it that way. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. And there's a couple of different podcast places out there that will do all this for you.
That's right. Yeah.
One of them is Fireside. I didn't mention that, but Fireside is really good. I don't know what CMS you guys use at Light Network. Probably just your custom built stuff, but Fireside is one of those that you could literally just sign up for an account, and it's $10-15 a month, and it will host a podcast for you. It'll do all that approval stuff for you. You just literally have to upload episodes, upload the album artwork, and it's very, very good. I have a friend in Austin who runs this, and it's a very good platform. I don't use it because I've been using something way before this came about. This was built in like 2017 or 18. But it's really good. And you can transfer in from I like that list right there. If you have any of those kinds of things from Anchor got really popular back a couple of years ago. Podbean has been one that has been used, I've seen. And then Podomatic is one of those I've seen a lot of preachers use as well. And so again, you can transfer those things in and, pay them $10-15 a month, whatever you need, and you're off. It's really good tool.
Yep. Something to check out. All right. Well, no matter what you do or how you do it, the important part is that you show up on a regular basis. And that's why the last thing you mentioned there is consistency. This is something that I think everybody struggles with. And, you know, the surveys we hear from listeners as well, even to these podcasts, you know, people say, hey, we just show up, just be consistent. You sort of set the tone with that, right? But you just need to be there. And for whatever reason, you know, other things happen. There are times when consistency is hard, um, but just regularly produce stuff, and that way you stay relevant, and people continue to think of you.
Right, and that goes into so much more than just being there, obviously, and that's the biggest part. But you know, you producing regularly scheduled content actually increases your likelihood of being discovered.
Yeah, that's right.
If you update your website, we try to update our website at least once a month and make sure that we have fresh graphics on there and we have, you know, new content, things like that. We obviously update our YouTube channel every week at least, sometimes multiple times a week. But again, being consistent is the hardest part. And if you can do that consistently, it leads to followings, it leads to great anticipation of your content, it leads to people knowing that you're dependable, knowing that when I fire up my podcast feed every Monday morning, that there's going to be, you know, these few shows that are always going to be there and they're going to download and they're going to be there for me to listen to. I don't know how they do it, Robert, but I listen to the Wall Street Journal's podcast, The Journal. They do a 5 days a week, every day, and it's a 25-minute show or so. And some of it is an in-depth reporting. And I'm like, how do they do that?
How do you do that?
But I know that every morning when I drop my kids off from school, that I'm going to be able to listen to that and hear probably something really fantastic. So, and again, you don't have to be that consistent, but tell your listeners, let them know, hey, every month on the 15th of the month, I'm going to have a new show.
Right.
Or every 2 weeks, I'm going to have a new, you know, blog post or something like that. So it's very, very good to let them know. And if they can depend on that, then that will be, you know, that'll be a lot of your issues solved right there.
Scheduling is baked into a lot of platforms. Facebook, for example, you can schedule posts from a page or I think maybe even to a group. YouTube, you can do the same thing. You can either say don't publish until this date, or you can set a premiere, which makes it more of like an event when your video releases.
You're not confined to live on these things at all. You can write these things weeks ahead of time. You can produce a video weeks ahead of time and have it post. I've got stuff posting next week. I'm going to be on vacation next week, and stuff is posting for Graymere, stuff is posting for my personal website, all sorts of different things.
And same thing with websites. You know, you can schedule a post obviously for a certain day and time, which is what we do with all the podcasts. They come out, they release at like 3 a.m. Nobody's there pushing the button. We just want the thing there for you when you get up in the morning or do your
I was about to say, but at 6 a.m., there are people that are like, okay, where's my episode? You know,
that's right.
It's just like a newscast at 5:30 at night. It's the same kind of thing. Television is incredibly consistent. And we've lost some of that with, you know, your Netflix and your time delayed kind of stuff, but people still depend on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's just being dependable is good. It means more than what you think. And this is one of those things you kind of have to sell people on because they think, I don't know about it. But just give it a try and see if you don't see some results. The results will speak for themselves, I think.
Yeah, you try doing a weekly or a bi-weekly show for 3 months and see where it gets you.
Yeah,
and you might be incredibly surprised.
Yeah. Yep. Good stuff. Online ministry and evangelism. Let me just take a second to remind all of you who are listening or watching that Preachers in Training is brought to you by the Light Network, a network of podcasts designed to encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, empower your faith. TheLightNetwork.tv is the place to go to find archived episodes of this podcast and of all of the others that are available from this platform. There is something for you to check out. I want to encourage you to do that. TheLightNetwork.tv. In addition to that, we do have a Facebook group specific to this show. Go to Facebook and search for Preachers in Training. It's a great way. If you're looking for resources or, hey, I need book recommendations, or what do you do when you're in this situation, or I'd really like an episode on this. Have you ever done one? Those are the kind of conversations that happen in the Facebook group. And so we'd like for you to be a part of that. Search Preachers in Training on Facebook and request to be added into that group. Also, search Preachers in Training in your podcast app or on YouTube to subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes release on Thursdays from thelightnetwork.tv and our podcasting partners. ChadL.co is the place to go if you're looking for Chad's content, both for the active digital parenting workshops as well as all of the other things that he's a part of. And wow, we're going to have links in our show notes for this episode of all the stuff that's been mentioned today.
Yep,
got a lot of work to do, but no, it's good. So go there, search for Preachers in Training Season 15, Episode 11. We're calling it Online Evangelism. That's where you can find all of the links and notes and things like that we've mentioned today. Chad, thanks. Is there anything we've left out before we go? Anything we need to say?
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty that we've left out, but thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
Of me to be on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate all you do. And if you're ever in Columbia, Tennessee, go check out Graymeer and Chad and all the crew there.
Yes.
The good stuff they're doing over there. I appreciate you a lot, man.
Thank you.
All right. We appreciate you being a part of this episode. Until next time, thanks for being with us. Let's go preach the word.